The Global Latin Factor Podcast.
Welcome you and all to another episode of the Global Latin Factor Podcast, where we talk about Latino everything. That's right. And today we have a very special Latina. She is the co-anchor for KRLD Afternoon News, weekdays from 3 to 7 p.m. Previously, she worked at KDAF CW33, and she's also been an anchor, TV anchor, weather anchor, and much more. She graduated from the University of North Texas with a bachelor's in art, radio, TV, film, and she's been in the business for almost 15 years. She has thousands of followers on social media, blue check verified, of course. First generation Cuban-American and half Mexican-American, an amazing combo. We have Kristin Diaz.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm good. I'm so happy to be here and just very grateful that you asked me to be here today. Thank you.
I appreciate it. And welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. I appreciate you being here. We met at a pizza fest.
Yes.
I thought you were super awesome.
We hit it off like immediately. It was like we knew each other forever.
Right? But then when I started looking into everything that you did, I was like, wow, she's super freaking amazing and really good. You're the first TV anchor I had. And it was like,
really?
wow,
I'm the first one?
Super
oh,
yeah.
yay!
Very first one. Okay, so we're going to do what we call Preguntas al chile.
Okay, vamos.
Preguntas al chile, like rapid fire questions.
Preguntas al chile.
Spicy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to ask you this or that. Let us know what you like. Tacos or tortas?
Tacos.
Corn tortillas or flour tortillas?
Oh, man. My abuelita's flour tortillas. Homemade. Homemade, yeah.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I don't know. If I go to a restaurant, I get corn.
Corn tortillas. Okay, gorditas or sopes?
Sopes.
Okay, Mexican coca or jarrito?
Oh, jarrito.
Okay, I'll get to your Cuban roots here in a second. I got you. Agua de horchata, jamaica o tamarindo?
Jamaica.
Salsa verde, salsa roja.
Verde.
Okay, pozole, menudo. Do you like either one?
Los dos.
Los
Pero
dos?
pozole.
Pozole. Do you drink a little
Because
bit?
I'm picky. I don't eat anybody's menudo.
That is true. A lot of people do say that because
Yeah.
it is true. Do you drink a little bit?
A
here and
little
there?
bit, yeah.
Okay. Do you like beer, Corona, Dos Equis, Modelo, Victoria?
Dos X.
Dos Equis.
Dressed.
Yes, good. Tequila or mezcal?
Tequila.
Conchitas, do you like the pink ones, the white ones, or the pink ones?
Pink because it's my favorite color.
Nice. Well, it's a little peach.
I got
peach.
a little pink. I sneak
Yeah.
it on.
Okay, so check it out. Now we're going to get to the Cuban side. Ropa vieja
Ay.
o fricase de pollo?
Oh, fricasé. Ropa vieja.
Okay. Cubano o pan con lechón?
Oh. Can I say pan con bistec?
Yeah, that's fine too. Lechón asado or vaca frita?
Vaca frita.
Vaca frita.
Sí.
Tamal cubano o tamal mexicano?
Oh, mexicano solamente porque, you know what? I grew up on my nana's. This is my Tejano grandmother.
Yeah.
She makes the best homemade tamales
Awesome.
every year. Every year.
Arroz con leche o flan?
Flan.
Flan. Okay. And just in general, when you hear the term Latino, what does it mean to you? What comes to mind? Or as far as like you being a Latina, do you identify? Do you care for the term?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's everything to me. It's my identity. It's my love. It's my passion. It's my pride. It's my history. To be Latina to me is just, it's a superpower, you know, it's a beautiful thing, you know, because it means something different to every Latino. Because just like an American, we all have our roots from different, countries.
Yeah.
And to be Latino, you can be a variety of that. And for me to be first generation Cuban-American,
Right.
And Tejana, on my
Yeah.
mother's side, I have such a beautiful history behind me from my ancestors, from my family, that I've never forgotten in anything that I've done. I've tried to, as much as I can, pull from, whether it be the style, the boldness, the the encouragement,
Right.
because to be a Latino is not easy,
Right.
and the things that we've made in history, and the point that, for my family, how we have gotten here and how we have, excelled in so many things. To me, that's just like, with all of the challenges against Latinos, I think it's just something that I'm full of pride for.
I appreciate those words, and the part was nobody has said it, and I think it's super awesome. The being Latino is a superpower.
Yeah.
'Cause I think it's super awesome.
Yeah.
But the simple fact that even if you do know, if you're Latino, you speak to a language, I think that counts for more for the same reason that your brain operates in a different way whenever you're talking in Spanish and English and flipping back
I'm
and
so
forth.
sorry.
You're good. You're good. So going back and forth, it's
Absolutely.
crazy, right?
And even there are Latinos that are not bilingual.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they love the food.
Yeah.
They know it's home to them because of their roots, or they love the music. They may not know what they're saying, but they're like, the rhythm, it hits their soul,
Yeah.
It's to be Latino is still to be connected to your roots, even if you don't speak the language,
Yeah, that's true too. And then you said another thing that I liked, and then I heard my dad say the other day, because his granddaughters were born here in Texas now, so they're Tejanitas too,
Yeah.
and my brother too. And like you said, the same thing, because it is true.
Yeah.
You were born in Texas, so you were a Tejana.
Where they say the border crossed
Yeah.
us,
Yeah, it's true. Okay, so I wanted to touch up on, because you were interviewed before different podcasts and things like that, but during that time, did you had any questions that you wish they would have asked about during that time? Anything that came to mind?
I just kind of go with the flow, and I'm really happy to help or offer, any kind of advice that I can to anybody who's ever interested in the things that I've done.
Yeah.
I'm happy to share my talents. I'm happy to share my experience. I'm happy to share my resources. So if there are ever any questions that someone asked me or has been meaning to ask me, or somebody who watches this and, would like to reach out to me for, I'm all for it.
That's nice. Okay, but I did have some questions. Where did the passion of going into the news, was there ever any influence that you saw when you were little? They were like, I want to be an anchor,
right,
or a radio personality, anything like that?
So, there's a lot of times that I've had some self-reflection over this, because being a news anchor was not my dream. It was not. And it's funny how full circle it is for me to be in media and to be specifically in local news. My mother, she's retired now, but her career was in broadcasting.
Right.
She was in sales and then ultimately management for radio and television. So when I was a little girl, my mom was actually the general manager of Super Tejano 108 in Houston.
Nice.
Some of my youngest memories as a little girl, going to work on a weekend with my mom, and while she's away, working in her office, her asking the DJs to watch me. So I remember like playing with the foam, the soundproofing foam that they put in the DJ booths.
Yeah.
I remember picking at it and wanting to play on the mic, wanting to pretend like I was Selena, because this is back in the 90s, right? Selena's huge. This is a Tejano station. They're playing her music constantly, and when I was little, I wanted to be just like her. I wanted to be like so many other, Latinas in the 90s. I mean, I wanted to grow up to be just like Selena and be performing and singing and dancing. I can dance, but I can't sing. But, being at a radio station at 5 years old, I remember that. And then I moved to Dallas because my mom ended up becoming the general manager and vice president of Univision here in Dallas. And she stayed in that position for 19 years and was the GM and the VP of not only Univision, but also Telefutura. And she started that station here. So again, it goes back to my childhood. I have so many memories of being at the television station and, hanging out in the edit booths and watching them edit video and going to the newsroom and, hanging out and, talking to the reporters and going into the studio and always thinking, gosh, it's so cold in here. Like never wanting to be in the studio,
Right.
but knowing that I couldn't play in the studio, And so it's funny how I have all of this connection.
Right.
But it was not my dream. I wanted to be a performer. I wanted to be a professional dancer. Since the age of 4, my parents always had me in dance classes.
Oh, nice.
And when I was 7 years old, and I was living here now already in Dallas at that time, I was placed in a ballet academy. And I was very serious about my studies and was in a pre-professional ballet company up until I graduated high school. And when I went into college, I was even thinking of being a double major at the time, of a dance major. My dream was to be like a backup dancer and go on tour and, just kind of be in the background, not the center stage. And and unfortunately, when I was 15, about to turn 15, I tore my ACL.
Ouch.
And that was a big blow to my future as a dancer. And my parents always had a very, very strict, standards that you cannot dance unless you bring home A's and B's. You must be an A-B student, keep your grades up and be focused in school. School always came first. In order for me to dance, it was a privilege. They always made sure that I knew it was a privilege to be able to dance. And so one of the things that I did in school that I always enjoyed was debate. I was on the debate team since like my freshman or sophomore year in high school. I joined the debate team because I loved the public speaking and I loved learning about current events. And knowing both sides of the story and how to argue both sides of the story. And so I was on varsity debate for 3 of my 4 years that I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
And I think it was my junior or senior year, I was able to graduate early. And I know this is a very long story, but I think it's all a part of, how I got here.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And it's just, in high school they saw this trade school, you could go do for mechanics, cosmetology and all this. And they had a class where it was just like your setup here, lights, camera, microphones. And I said, wow, what class is this? And they said, oh, this is our media technology class. We'll teach you how to edit video. We'll teach you how to be in broadcasting. And I said, sign me up. And from being worried about what my future was going to be at that time as a high school student, because I no longer was seeing a true professional pathway to dance. I really then, threw myself into school, and having this class really kind of gave me like another avenue to, in my mind, have showtime, how to have a performance, how to create a show. And that's what I thought maybe I wanted to do, was be a producer and create content and whatnot. This is, before social media was crazy.
Before influencers.
Before reels.
Before influencers was even a word.
We didn't do that. So this was my creative outlet. And I kind of merged the debate and the current events with the production. And then by the time I graduated, I decided to go to UNT that had a great news program.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of how it's kind of weird, right? I was always around television and radio, but it was it wasn't until God kind of changed my path a little bit. Took the blinders off. The world is more than just dance, Kristin. And then that's kind of how I got into it. And the University of North Texas, for anybody who's, curious about a school here that might be able to help flourish their career in broadcasting, they have an amazing program.
Nice.
A radio station there, a television station there that actually broadcasts. It's not just you're at your maybe high school or something like that, you did the announcements and it was only in your campus. This actually goes through the cable. Anybody in Denton can watch North Texas television.
And you were part of it, right?
That's produced here.
And you were part of it. How long were you there?
So I was able to get my bachelor's in 4 years. I know that's different for everybody, but for me, in those short 4 years, I worked at the radio station first, KNTU 88.1 as a DJ. Midday Drive, it's actually a jazz station, the only jazz station here in the Metroplex. And they also used to have their own newscasts on the radio station. So I also helped with the newscast. And the only reason why I joined radio first is because the television station already had all the positions filled. They, it was all ran by students, and it was by seniority. So as a freshman, sophomore, I couldn't get a spot, so I went to go work for the radio station. And then eventually, as a sophomore, the TV program director, she kind of was like, "All right, come over here." And after that, it was just one project after another at the TV station there.
Do you
But it was
remember your
fun.
first time you were in front of the cameras? How did it feel like?
You know, for me, I had been kind of in front of the cameras as a high schooler. So I used to model when I was younger, and
nice.
I had been in a couple of commercials. And like for Jaritos and Bimbo, and I had been in a couple
Wow,
of
for
commercials
real?
for them. Yes,
I'm gonna YouTube
and
it.
when I was in high school, so I was kind of like comfortable with the camera. It didn't really bother me too much, but I will say that when I started working at the TV station there on campus, I immediately wanted to be the anchor. You know, like everybody wants to be the anchor. They want to be the, and they were like, no, that's for the seniors that are graduating who need to make a reel so that they can, you know, give that, you know, with their resumes to find a job.
Oh, yeah.
You need to start off like as a reporter or production or behind the scenes. And I said, no, come on, I want to do something in front of the camera. Like, okay, what about weather? We need a weather anchor. Why don't you audition for weather? And I do remember during that audition, I was like, man, I got this, you know, like it's nothing. And I go, well, the thing is when you're doing weather, it's all mirror image,
it's all
you
mirror.
know, and it's ad lib. So there's no teleprompter, there's no script. You have to memorize everything, and then you have to basically have a glorified PowerPoint and remember the order of your slides and give your presentation. And I gave the 7 day like backwards. I started like a Saturday, Friday, and Thursday. I was so nervous. I didn't even realize until I got to like Wednesday and Tuesday that I had been given the whole 7 day backwards. I was like, oh my God, I'm never gonna get this. They probably think I'm a huge idiot. Well, the next thing I know, they call me. They're like, we loved you. You just kind of like went with the flow, and you made us laugh, and you just kind of just kept
awesome.
rolling with it, you know. So you got the job. I was like, okay.
Hey, it
So
worked
that
out for the best, so
was
that's
in
good.
college. Yeah. I definitely learned then, and I actually was able to get a job. Thank God. A couple years later, straight out of college, down in Corpus
I think your
Christi.
confidence was sold it, even though you were messing it
Yeah,
up. in the
I was like,
sequence,
I knew I was messing
you
it
was
up big. I
Still,
was like,
you go
"Eh."
still going in like you know what you was doing, and you
Yeah.
were like, you know.
Yeah, it was
So
fun.
that was good. Okay, before we move on to the next, whenever you moved to Corpus Christi, because you worked over there, how did you get past that dark time whenever you ACO? Because I'm pretty sure you were young and it was pretty traumatizing. How did it help you push forward to know that there was still more for you to do? Even though it was one of your bigger dreams,
Yeah.
that you still had to move forward. What helped you push? What did you see? Like, did your parents encourage you? Did anything happen? You said, I just need to keep going with this.
I was fully invested in having a professional dance career. I, you know, woke up in the morning, would go to school, and as soon as I got off of school at 4 o'clock, I went to my first dance class at 5. I would take multiple classes, you know, maybe up to 3 sometimes at night, and wouldn't get home till like 10:30 at night, do my homework, you know, shower, go to bed, and then the next day start all over again. And I
Right.
danced six days a week. So you're right, it was very traumatizing. It was a dark time. I think I'm learning now that my second ACL surgery, which was later down the road, was more traumatizing and more triggering for me than the first time. I think the first time it happened when like I said, I was almost 15. I still had so many other things to catch my attention because I was in school, you know, as a high school student, and you know, I was a student class president, and I was in the foreign language club, and I was in, you know, I was on the step team, and I did a whole bunch of other stuff that it kind of just, I was like, okay, well maybe I can't do this, but I have so many other things to fill up. You know, my schedule. I have so many other things I can keep myself busy. Debate, like I said, I was on track. So I kept myself busy, and I still kept dancing. So it's not like I stopped completely. You know, I just knew that I wasn't going to probably be picked up by a company because it's just like any athlete, you know, you're injured. Like who's gonna recruit you? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So pretty much, because you had other options, you stayed busy and occupied, that it kept away from, even though it was like a real deep
in the
dream
back of my
yours.
mind, it wasn't completely gone. It was like, okay, we'll take a little break, you know, I should still focus on like maybe school and going to college, and I can still dance, you know, like maybe on the side. And I did. When I was in college, I did take a lot of dance classes. I was on a small little dance team on campus. And I taught dance at a gym for kids on Saturdays. So I worked 3 jobs through college. So that was one of my side hustles, was to teach kids a little hip hop class and whatnot. So, I still had it. When I was in my 20s working in Corpus Christi, I tore my ACL again. That was when I really was like, okay. It's like I'm done. And I was like, all right.
So was it the same leg? Or was it the other?
Other.
The other leg.
One, yeah.
So both the legs.
It was, yeah.
So we were like, "Tate quieta." You did that dance. What is your favorite dance movie of all times?
Dance movie?
Yeah, there's so many of them.
This is so lame because I didn't really grow up. When I was a kid, it was like Blockbuster. It was like you were at the mercy of whatever was at Blockbuster, and I don't ever really remember there being like really good. Dance movies there. Like anytime I could find like the Bolshoi Ballet, like at their actual performance, on VHS, then I would try to rent it out, or anything Baryshnikov, performing in it, I would want to do that. But I never had like a favorite that I actually owned. So this is what I'm saying. It's going to be like, what's the one that was like Honey Daniels?
Yeah.
What was that?
I don't recall, but the only one
was
that comes to mind.
No, not Step Up.
Save the Last Dance is the only one that comes to mind.
One of those.
Yeah.
I think when I became like a teenager, I would watch those, and I would be like, oh, they're cool, you know?
It is.
But I don't think I really had like a favorite.
I like Save the Last Dance.
But now, you got Netflix. You can stream whatever dance, movie that ever existed,
Yeah,
but.
that's true. Okay, so what took you to Corpus Christi? I know probably a job offer, right?
Yeah,
and you were there for almost 9 years or 9 years?
Yeah. We're going to take a little transition, right? I'm going to get a little water.
Absolutely.
Corpus Christi.
Yeah, so what took you to Corpus Christi? Was it a job offer? Were you applying for different things to trying out? Because you were a weather woman before over there, right?
Yeah. So I graduated from the University of North Texas, and I remember I graduated in May, and I was thinking, oh, man, I got the summer off. Yeah, I'm going to relax. And I remember my parents being like, girl, no, you better get the job. And so I was like, okay, well, let me start applying. And I had been doing the weather for the campus TV station for 3 years. And in those 3 years, I was like, I really kind of like this. I kind of liked the ability to be off script, to show personality and to ad lib, and not to really be at the mercy of like anybody telling me how to do my job,
Right.
The creativeness of being a weather anchor is what I really liked, And I remember it was like 2011, and my parents were like, look, to become a weather anchor, you need to be certified.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to be a weather anchor in a top market, you need to become a meteorologist, and that requires more schooling. And in 2011, I know some people remember we were bouncing back from like the recession from 2008 and whatnot. And at the time, a lot of my mentors were telling me, Kristin, a lot of newsrooms are actually reducing their staff, and they're making their reporters, MMJs, or multimedia journalists, basically a one-man band. They are the photographer, they're the editor, they're the reporter, all in all in one, right?
Wow.
In one position. And they were like, do you want to become a reporter, or do you want to go back to school to become a weather anchor? And I said, you know what? I feel like I've worked really hard to have a really good resume, and I'm just going to throw it out there and see what sticks. One thing we didn't talk about, but I mentioned that I worked 3 jobs in college, and one of which was I worked at the CW33.
Oh, yeah, you did.
And I worked as a production assistant. I started working there in 2008, actually, I was still a sophomore, I think, in college. And getting that behind the scenes exposure to a real local newscast, and getting to not just school, but actually getting to work at a real station in Dallas, that was huge. So I had all of that on my resume, and Corpus Christi had a position for a weekend anchor, and I think it was a weekday reporter. And they hired me for that. They were like, hey, do you want this? Yes. Okay, cool. They hired me. But then like a week later, they called me back and they said, hey, I know that we hired you for this reporter anchor position, but you wouldn't happen to know how to do weather, right? I'm like, what? So I didn't put that I had experience in weather on my resume because I wasn't certified and I didn't think anybody would hire me without the credentials.
Yes.
Well, that's because smaller towns, which again, we're in Dallas, Fort Worth, this is a huge metroplex, right? In smaller towns, they don't have sometimes the budget, or they don't have the luxury of getting, meteorologists to come down to them. So they will accept a weather forecaster who might just be certified barely, And so it's a lot of
So you
on
had
the
enough
job.
experience, though,
I had
right?
enough experience, and they were going to give me on the job training. And they
That's
were like,
funny.
"You okay with that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, you still need to come audition. We still need to make sure you know how to put a weathercast together."
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And thankfully, I knew how to work all the programs, and I knew how to put together a weather forecast. I knew how to get the weather from the National Weather Service and how to interpret that data. And they hired me. And
That's awesome.
I was their weather anchor for 4 years. I started off on the weekends, and less than a year later, I just started there, and they promoted me to the weekday.
The weekdays.
The weekday. And that was like pressure because I was like, whoa. Now I'm like, people really relying on me to know, my stuff, And so I actually went back to school through Penn State University, and I went online schooling to become certified in weather forecasting. And it was during that I was like, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm not as passionate about weather. Because if you know any real meteorologists, like in real life, they love weather. They are like weather nerds, weather geeks, like to the core, And I was like, yeah, that's not really me. I'm not that super passionate about forecasting. Like it was fun to me, like doing it and going through the motions, but like the actual wanting to wade through the storm. I was like, I'd rather be reporting in the storm than being on the weather wall telling you that it's coming.
About pressures and cold and hot and all this.
I don't want to be sitting there. I want to be where the action is. Put me in the hurricane.
Yeah.
God heard me and put me in Hurricane Harvey.
Oh, yeah. You
I
were
was
over
down there when Hurricane Harvey came. But that to me was the thrilling part. And that's when I realized I wanted to be back in news.
Yeah.
And so I transitioned and I became the news anchor.
The news anchor. Okay, so you must love reading. Because sometimes I do solo episodes and I do the teleprompter, the real small one.
Yeah.
And it I'm still struggling through it, trying to get used to it.
Yeah.
But I know it requires a lot of reading to be really good. And it just goes fast. I still have the remote and cheat.
Yeah.
But so do you enjoy reading a lot?
You know what? No.
What? What do you mean?
No, no, my mom would always, even as a kid, I was like, I only like going to the book fair. But no, I was never a big reader. I think for me, it was just, we always had the news on at home, and I thought that was normal. I thought everybody watched the news at home. I didn't realize that wasn't normal. Granted, my mom worked for Univision, so we always had Univision on, so I would watch Primer Impacto, and I was at Despierta America, my mom would, channel surf because she wanted to see what the other newscasts were, what their breaking news was. So I got to, I saw that as a habit,
nice.
Going to see what the different, newscasts had, as their leading story and who their reporter was and how they presented the story. And it was just, to me, I thought that was what everybody did until I
maybe
remember
Latino families do during that time. I think everybody knows about Primer Impacto.
Sure, yeah. And so, and that was the other thing. When I did finally, start thinking, you know what, I do really like news. I do see myself having this as a career. It's funny when people would be like, well, what's your favorite shows? And I used to say Primer Impacto. People used to make fun of me.
What?
They always laugh. But I
didn't even laugh in a joking manner. I was more relating to you because we used to watch it all the time.
But you know why? Because they have the most outrageous stories.
They do.
You don't find these stories on English newscasts. You don't see you just don't see they are in the jungle and they find some random this person with a rare medical condition living in the mountains and they're we used to watch the Primer Impacto, so intrigued. These are amazing stories. I loved that. It wasn't the fire, the shooting, the car robbery, the high speed.
Or the same politics.
The same politics.
Freaking all
it
the
wasn't
time.
that. I loved how outlandish, outrageous, just the curiosity in me was just
Yeah.
like, how do they find these stories? And then what I always loved was that it was a female newscast.
Yeah, it was
You
all
know?
the time. Yeah.
Barbara Bermuda, you know, seeing her look head to toe, hot
Yep,
on
all the
it, you
time.
know, and then presenting these strange stories. To me, it was fascinating as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But yeah, people always laugh. They're like, really? And they roll their eyes pretty much. I'm like, yeah, dude.
Now that you explain it to me that way, whenever I was little, I used to watch it. I didn't see it that way, but now that you're saying that, you are right.
Yeah.
There were a unique way of like news compared to everybody else.
Yeah, nobody else did it
Yeah.
like that. And like I said, you know, it was just different from local newscasts.
It was most
Yeah.
definitely. Okay, so now that you started to do that, so what made you want to like fall in love with it? Like, why you realize, okay, I'm an anchor. I really want to do the anchor. I know that you said earlier the debate. You really like to look at current events.
Mm-hmm.
Did that kind of play a factor into wanting to do an anchor, and then because you like to the news and like to be informed about that?
Yeah, I think it really, for me, always like kind of living a very sheltered life, being very
yeah,
naive,
yeah.
and you know, just going to school, learning what they wanted me to learn, going to the dance studio, and just being focused in a craft, and then going home. Like news and learning about current events helped me explore the world. You know, outside of my home, outside of my comforts, you know, and learn more about just how the world worked. But what truly made me fall in love with local news is the people. You know, realizing that you are a public servant when you're in the news. You know, it's not about you. It's, and I talked to this with a lot of the girls that, you know, I'm connected with through various like Facebook pages and stuff like that, girls that I've worked with, you know, who, you know, are younger than me, that have asked me like, what is it like being in news? And, you know, I want to be, you know, like, just like you in the, you know, the same vicinity of presenting. And it's like, it's not about the lights, it's not about the makeup, it's not about the hair, it's not about what
Yeah.
you look like. It's about what you are providing to the public. And Corpus Christi was an amazing community to be in as a young journalist, to grow. There's not a day that goes by that I don't get a DM, a comment, you know, somebody reaching out and saying, we miss you, we love you, we support you, we're happy for you, we're so glad you're doing well. Like the love that you get from a community that you set to serve, there's nothing like it, you know? And there are people who get in the business for the wrong reasons,
Right.
you know? And I always tell you, you know, young journalists, is like, you have to understand that you are a journalist for the people.
Yeah.
Like to find the truths, to deliver public information, and you know, to take care of the people who watch you. You know, that's what made me love local news.
I like that because there's two things that stand up for me. I was in the military, so selfless service is one of the things that they push.
Right.
And that's freaking awesome that you're able to do that.
Yeah.
As far as that, and I don't think everybody. I used to do the one of the local stations here, but community service, and I always knew that it was a service. Like I was
Yeah.
a volunteer and service to provide, and I don't think that a lot of people see that part.
Yeah.
And the fact that you love that part,
Yeah.
is I think the reason why they still reach out to you. And
Yeah,
that's freaking awesome.
Absolutely. But, you know, and I always tell people who, you know, who are interested in getting, you know, in any type of local news, you cannot just come to work, you know, read the press release, and then you're done. Like that's not it. You have to be involved in the community that you are serving. You
Yeah.
know, you have to know the people. You have to talk to them. You have to give of your time. It's not just of your talents. Great. You know, you're pretty to look at while you read something. Great. Anybody could do that. You know, you need to have 2 cents of a brain to be able to do that. But connecting with the people and knowing what's important to them, you know, how it's going to affect their daily lives. That's how you get the stories, you know, being honest, being an honest person, you know, also knowing when you make a mistake or when you don't do something right, and being honest, and that's all of those traits are the traits that should be in a journalist. Are we living in a world where it's not always the case?
No.
Absolutely. But I do hope that we bring more Latino journalists in newsrooms who have the power to do that.
Yeah. Is that the reason why you well, let me go and address that part. What is it, the problem, the corporations that put a lot of money to those stations, they really don't allow them to say the truth, even though the journalists are technically just reading whatever is given to them instead of going out in the field and talking to the people?
I think it's a big misconception between local news and cable news.
Cable news.
I think everyone kind of likes to put us all together.
And it's not.
And it's not. It's absolutely not. Cable news, you have talent that is controlled by the owner. You know, with local news, and especially who work, you know, in partnership with, you know, newspaper journalists,
right?
Which I truly, hands down, give all my respect to, because they are the ones really doing a lot of the dirty work, more than just television and radio newscasters. But they are we are completely separate. And I think that's the biggest misconception. Now, does it happen that there are companies that sway one way or another? Absolutely. And when you are buying your own channel, hence a cable, you know, channel or streaming channel, like you're allowed to do that, you know? But for local news, it is supposed to be non-biased. It is supposed to be both sides of the story. That is true journalism. And anyone who's truly of the craft will always support that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I appreciate you explaining that.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody, like you said, wants to put it together, but it really is not that.
Yeah, it's not the same.
And then you'll get a way different story if you looked at the local channel, because they have no gain for it but to give you the truth compared to somebody that might be influenced because of money.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you really do like to be out in the community, right?
I love people. They have the best stories.
I know. So you read for an elementary school, you've been to Fiesta de las Flores and all that. It's like, why is it that you like to be out and talk to, like you said, the stories itself?
Yes, I love people. You know, it's not a job to, you know, when people say, like, when you love what you do, it's not a job, you know, and I genuinely love connecting with people, and I love to learn from people, you know. I think, and I was talking to somebody about this, they said, you know, I really like watching your interviews because sometimes you ask what I'm going to ask, but I'm too afraid to ask it. And I'm like, I have no shame in asking a stupid question. You know what I mean? Right. Because it's like, okay, but I didn't know, you know, like I needed you to explain it to me, because if I needed it explained, somebody else probably did too, you know, like it's, you know, I can laugh at myself, you know, not everybody can, you know. True. And so I don't mind putting myself out there to you know, to get the information, but I'm genuinely like just curious of all things, you know. And I think, I don't know, we were like, oh, you know, this is a true Gemini or me or something like that, but I think anybody who's really passionate about what they do, to me, is fascinating, you know. And through my job now, we have a segment called Ask the Expert. Yes. And every day I love that segment. Thank you. Yeah. We try to find something that's happening in the news, and we try to find somebody who's smarter than us about it. I mean, as journalists, we're not supposed to be the smart people. We're supposed to find the people who are smart about it and ask them the questions, you know? Absolutely. I'm like, I could be, you know, people say, oh, you know everything about it. I'm like, no, I don't. I said, I talked to somebody who knew everything, and this is what they told me, you know? And, you know, sometimes it's, for example, the other day we were talking to an aviation expert about just the state of airlines right now. You know, there's been a lot of cancellations. It's been in the news like every single day about all these airlines having to cancel flights for the summertime, and a lot of these pilots have been going or have been picketing about their work conditions. You know, they're all unionized, so they can't be overworked. You don't want them to be either, because they're flying your plane. That's a very dangerous job, right? But this man, he is a former pilot, and I mean, he could just explain everything to us about what it's like as a pilot, you know, why certain schedules for flights are the way that they are, why they can't take off on time, why things might be delayed, because these are the things that are happening behind the scene. I'm like, wow, you know, like to me, it's fascinating. And
Yeah.
so when I find people like that,
I watched that episode, and what I found fascinating, besides the fact that he was truly an expert and he was able to answer all your questions, was something that he said that really stood out. Because first of all, it was a perfect storm, right? With the pandemic and everything, now certain pilots have to retire at a certain age. They can't go past a certain one.
Correct.
And then there's not enough coming in.
Correct.
Because it takes a long time to complete to be a pilot for the hours you have to flight. But now,
see, I didn't know that. Did you know that?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I
about
was
the
just
hours.
like, wow.
I didn't
that
say
they
I
had
wanted to.
that they had I mean, como es graduate, retired.
Retired. I didn't know about the retired
Wow.
and the hours. I looked into pilot. I'm not saying we're gonna be a pilot, but
Really?
I'm like, yeah.
Oh,
But-
yeah, and you were military too,
Yeah.
so you probably had to.
So the other thing that stood out, what he said, was the part where minorities or Latinos or anything might have, I don't know, maybe we don't realize or see that there's always like a white man as a pilot. I'm not saying that's the case, but most of the time that's what you see.
And so I asked, I was
Yeah.
like, you know, so why is it that we don't see more minority pilots? And the thing is that it's the way that pilots have to go, the avenues that they have to become a pilot. They either get with some of these like academies that the airlines are starting to create so that they can be more streamlined and to go straight into their position, right? It's reducing the amount of like hours or like training that they need, but it's streamlined so that they know from like day one, if they're hired by American Airlines to start becoming a pilot, they know from day one they're going to be an American Airlines pilot. They know all of their standards and procedures, right? Otherwise, like let's say you and I want to become pilots, but you know we don't know if we want to become commercial pilots, so we just go and get our our certifications. That's one thing, you know. Do you know how expensive it is?
It is. It's very expensive.
It's a very, very expensive
It's like
trade. What's considered a trade.
60,000 a year, or
and there
100
aren't a
something.
lot of
Yeah.
financial there aren't like a public. There's not like a Fannie Mae or something like that can fund you for a loan for pilot school. It's
Right.
like all pretty much private loans, and then the prerequisites for them or the requirements for them are like, super difficult. So it's not easy to become a pilot, and it's not cheap. So what happens? People who have the money are able to complete that or have ways to get the money, but a lot of underprivileged people,
minorities and Latinos
minorities
now have the
specifically.
financial backing,
Correct.
or the loans that they can get to.
That's why they're trying to make a change.
Yeah, I
because
think it's
they're
gonna
like,
happen.
I don't care what color you are. We need people to
need
fly. we
and
need people.
And I think the government is going to intervene eventually, because they're going to see that, like, come on, everybody has to fly. There's so many flights being
Something's going to
delayed.
have to happen,
It's gonna
because
have to
that
happen.
is a major industry for so many things. We think about it commercially,
Yeah.
but privately, I mean, and then what he was saying is that, a lot of these helicopter pilots are actually going to be going into filling these commercial spots because they're paying so much. But then we're going to see in the future a shortage of helicopter pilots, and we need a lot of them for medical reasons.
Yeah.
So it was a really fascinating
It was.
conversation. But I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
To me, I think it was so cool, to learn about those things.
I like that, the curiosity part. I like it myself, because I'm very curious about stuff. I'm going to ask. I'd rather ask and know just for that moment even than not to ever forever wonder about whatever question I had at that time. You know what I mean? And like I said, even if it's not the smartest question at the time, like you said, you don't know who else wants to hear that. And I'm going to ask.
Yeah.
Whether you want or not, I am going to ask. Cause you like emceeing. Do
I
you
love
like
emceeing.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
I
seen you in
do.
action. You're
Yeah.
really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pizza Fest. That was
Yeah,
cool. Shout out
absolutely.
to Original Me that they brought me on for that for that weekend. And I love emceeing. Matter of fact, I miss it because I feel like I emceed like almost every event down in Corpus Christi. It was like anytime there was a something available, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And here, I moved back to Dallas during the pandemic.
Oh, yes,
so everything
you
was
did.
shut down. And now that everything's starting back up, I'm like, hey guys, I'm like the new girl, but I've been here for like 2 years. So can I still use that as an excuse? But I would love to get back into doing more emceeing. It's fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think you are, and you're really good, and you
Thank
connect
you.
with the people, and again, you're just curious about whatever is going on with the event.
I think the thing is like one thing I noticed is people will see me, for example, on TV, or they'll hear me on the radio, and they think that I'm different from them or something. And I'm not, you know? And I think when I start to meet people, I just like that connection that I have, you know, and people really are like, man, I feel like I could talk to you all day. I feel like we know each other. Or, you know, I still have like, you know, women that start calling me mija, you know, it's like all of a sudden I've been like invited over to the barbecue and stuff, you know? And I think the world is missing that sometimes. We don't have that connection with our neighbors, with our, sometimes not even our own family. You know, like that human connection is so important. And I think just showing that it doesn't matter whether we're on a podcast or, you know, we're on television or whatever, like we are people just like everybody else. And like, I see you, you know, and I always, as a Latina, I think it was very important for me to be in the position that I was as a morning news anchor down in Corpus Christi, to let people know that like I'm here for you guys, you know?
Yeah, not only that, but like you said earlier, younger anchors to look at you, like in Latina, just like you looked at the Primer Impacto anchors. Now you're kind of sort of the ones that they look up to, kind of, to see if like, oh wow, she's able to do it. I'm able to do it. And she kind of looks like me, you know what I mean?
And I think also because, I mean, for me, I've always watched Spanish television to see people like me. Not English television.
You're in English now.
And now I'm in English television, you know? And kudos that there are so many more Latinas. I feel like we need more Latinos and we need more men in newsrooms. I see a lot of Hispanic girls in newsrooms now, which is great. And I'm happy to see that. I don't see it as much as I would like on more national shows. You know, I think we could definitely take over some of the morning airwaves with a couple more Latinas. I think the ABCs, NBCs, CBSs could benefit, you know, of having a Latina on
their viewership will go out through the roofs because
we still have a lot more to conquer.
But there's a lot of us. There's a lot of Latinos.
Yeah, there's a lot more in local newsrooms, and I just hope that continues.
Sammy, the owner for this place, she was telling me that women Latinas are being hired more on now than ever before.
Yeah, there's a turn. There's a turn.
I hear that.
I told you it's a superpower.
It is a superpower. So what brought you back to Dallas? I know you, like you mentioned earlier, you moved from the pandemic. And so it was a job change?
It was. You know, I had been down in Corpus Christi, and like I said, I was their weekend anchor, weather anchor, and became their main weather anchor. And then I had also gotten into news, and I felt like I had pretty much done everything that, you know, my heart desired down there. And I came down to the end of a contract, and it was, I'm not gonna lie, it was scary, you know, because you get kind of used to it, you know.
Absolutely.
And I said, no, like, God, I know you blessed me with a path that, you know, is set for no one else but me. Like, what is it that you want me to do? And I just felt like it was time for me to just move on to find something else. Never in a million years did I think I'd be coming back to Dallas. I just kind of like, it happened one day. I saw the opening for KRLD, which is like a legacy station here, you know? I mean, I grew up also, you know, I specifically remember my neighbors. They were from New York. I lived in Capel when we first moved here. Capel. Yeah, and my neighbors, they were from New York, but they used to love listening to news radio. And I remember going, they had a daughter who was just a year older than me, and I would go with her to her soccer games on Saturday mornings. And all the way there and all the way back, we'd listen to news radio, 1080 KRLD. And I just remember being like, can we like listen to some music, like Britney Spears?
Right?
Or something.
Christina Aguilera.
Yeah, Christina Aguilera, something. Backstreet Boys, you know, again, like the 90s, right? And I just remember that. And now as an adult, again, full circle, I'm like, wow, I'm working for that freaking station that I remember as a kid, you know, thinking it was so boring. And now I love it, you know.
Yeah, they're really good.
Thank you.
I was listening to today. I was listening to y'all, and really crisp.
Thank you.
Really nice.
I'm blessed to work with. I'm a little dog with a lot of big dogs. You know, when they hired me, again, like I said, I saw the position, and my parents still live here, so I was like, that's it. That's my next move. And I've always wanted to get back into radio. Like I said, I had done it in college, and it was still on my bucket list to do it professionally, and so this was my opportunity to do it. And I was still doing news, But when they hired me, I mean, I was just thinking, gosh, I'm working with legends. You know, these are guys that have been on the air for 30, 40 years.
Yeah,
you know?
Celebrated somebody that 30 years in the
yes,
industry,
Mike
right?
Rogers is one of my coworkers.
Yeah.
He works on the morning show, but he's been there for 30 years.
30 years.
That's like my whole life.
It is,
You know what I
right.
mean? Like my
It
whole life. And
is.
it's funny because they do make fun of me because I'm like the young kid.
Oh,
you
happy
know?
belated birthday.
Thank
Your birthday was not that long
you.
ago.
Yes, it was.
So you are.
Yeah.
So you are the youngest one there,
Yes,
right?
on the air.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, for anchoring, we do have a young lady who's a reporter there. She's a little younger than me, but yeah, and then as a Latina, you know, to come in as for one young, that's tough in that newsroom. Two, female.
Yeah,
There's
female.
only two of us on the air as anchors. Susie Solis, who's other Latina. There you go.
What?
She's in the morning, and then I'm in the afternoons.
Yeah.
And we have one female reporter. You know what I mean? So like, we need more women in news radio too. But yeah. So I had that, and then on top of that, like coming in from like television, I was like coming into radio and being the newbie and being young and being Latina. It just was like, it was a big deal for me to be hired. I was very, very thankful. Very thankful.
I think you still brings a different type of energy. Even some of the things that I haven't seen, maybe because I missed it, but the videos is something that, I mean, you're kind of like, maybe they haven't done that.
No, they
but
didn't. You're
ahead of
right.
it.
So the pandemic hit, and Zoom was like, wildfire spread like wildfire. Everybody was doing Zoom. Well, we didn't really need to because with the radio, you just pick up the phone. Hey, can I record this conversation? Oh, great. There's our interview. It's recorded. Put it on the air. Like, it's that simple. But when everybody else is doing Zoom, it's like, why can't we do Zoom? And there's still a lot of people that are in the newsroom that they don't do it. Like me and my co-anchor, he's so cool. He's so down, and he's like, yeah, let's do it. Sure, why not? And I think that's the FM in him. He was in FM radio for most of his career, and I think that energy of being a jock, and being on FM radio, like, it's different than AM radio, right?
Yeah.
But that's why I really like working with him. He's always down. He's like, yeah, let's do it. And so we got some cameras, and we started doing the Zoom and putting that element on our website.
Yeah.
And it's great because, again, it's the human connection. Like, these people who have been doing interviews with that station for years, but they never knew who they were talking to. And now they can see our faces, and it's like, they're like, man, we loved that interview. It was so fun. It's like, there was nothing different about it. It's just that, like, we connected, because you could see me. There's something to say about that visual component. So, radio is great, but, like, things are changing. Digital has changed everything.
Yeah.
Social media, websites, and all that, Zoom. And
That is true. So I think we got ahead a little bit, but you went abroad and studied in England.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
How was that?
Oh, it was amazing.
I love the British accent.
Amazing. Oh, yeah. Me
Freaking
too.
love it.
You know what? It's funny because, like, when you're there for an extended amount of time, you start to pick it up. And, like, you don't mean to, but, like, I remember we came back, like, on our flight back, like, all of the students. And we were like, so sorry. Like, people would hit you with your luggage in the airport. And like, oh, so sorry. And we're like, where did we get this accent from? We became Madonna. You remember when Madonna all of a sudden got this accent? It's just because you get immersed in it and you start picking it up, But yes, when I was a senior at University of North Texas, through the radio, TV, and film program, they offer a summer program, a summer course that is in London, through the University of London. You get to stay with a host family, and it was for a whole summer semester. So I think we left like at the end of May or beginning of June, and we were there till like the end of July. And
it's almost 2 months.
Yeah.
Nice.
It was like 2.5 months. Yeah.
Nice.
And we stayed with the family, and I rode on the red bus to school every day because I lived like
the one on the movies.
Yes,
the two-story one.
Yeah,
that's so
like
cool.
I had the bus pass, and then we would ride the tube. They call their subway the tube, and we'd ride that, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was, and I just have to give a huge thanks to my parents. Like. My dad is from Cuba, My dad didn't have an opportunity like that,
True.
My dad went into the military. He's a retired first sergeant
Thank you for your
in
service.
the Marines, yes. And, that's how he got his his experience to travel and to, you know, have a different life was through the military, you know. And my mom, she's the oldest of 8, came from a small town in Brookshire, Texas, outside of Houston. And, you know, her father passed away when she was 10 and in a terrible accident. And her mom, my grandmother, was in that same accident but survived, but was in rehab for several years.
And the
so
mental
with 8
stuff.
kids, you know, they all got split up. So she had a hard childhood, you know, and she was the first to go to college. She was the first to, you know, make it out of Brookshire and whatnot. And so my parents went through a lot, and all they've ever wanted is to be able to pass that on to me, to have, you know, amazing opportunities. So it's not remiss. It's never like, it never passes me, like the sacrifice that my parents have put, you know, forward to make sure that not only me, but my brothers and sisters all were college educated and, you know, had a great life. But they encouraged it when they heard about it. They were like, yes. They're like, heck yeah, you're gonna go. Like, let's do it. You know, they were like pushing me to do it. And what was amazing was I turned 21 in London, and my parents surprised me and showed up.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
They went over there.
They went all the way over there, so I've never spent a birthday alone.
That's awesome.
I've never spent a birthday alone. They showed up and celebrated with me, and my classmates took us all to dinner, and then they went and did their own thing, you know. So I'm very blessed. Very blessed.
That's awesome. I think they will be proud of you.
Thank you.
For everything you're done and continue to do. You're still young. And it's amazing. Europe is a whole different vibe.
It is. I would love to go back. I would love to go back.
Yeah, I'm going back eventually. But yeah, it's a whole different vibe.
It's cool.
I've been to a few places, and like when I heard the first person like talking the British accent, I was like, say it again.
Yeah, it's a vibe, right?
It's
a vibe.
so freaking awesome. Okay, so tell me about the so you do a lot of tell me one time a story that was like, because first of all, you're very positive of all your posts that you do. And it's kind of hard, especially dealing with the news, right? Because a lot of the times the news is not the nicest things possible, right?
Yeah.
So have to take all that in and then still being positive. How do you do it? How do you manage?
Pet therapy.
Pet therapy.
I believe in, I love animals. I love animals. And anybody who follows me on social media, specifically my Facebook page, because I think it's easiest there to show. But, you know, sometimes I look at my timeline and, you know, my social media timeline, it's like shooting, stabbing, drowning, kid dies, this person dies, da-da-da-da-da, you know, and it's just negative. And it's like, you know, most people, they just unfollow or they just they probably don't, if you're not in news or a news junkie like I am, like you're probably not following all these pages like I am, you know, like I'm following every news source, you know, like around the world. And so you see a lot of it, and sometimes it's just like, it's draining because like I can never really turn it off, you know.
It's part of the job.
It's part of the job, you know. You always feel like you're missing something, you know, right? And I'm working on that. But honestly, like when I do try to make posts, I always try to say, okay, you know what? This is a funny post, or this is, you know, I love animal stories, and I try to post that. And, you know.
I stole your tortilla meme. The
Which
one
one
about
was that
the one you can, if a tortilla can rise, so can you, or something like that. That was freaking hilarious.
I don't know. I don't remember that one.
It was
but
forever ago. It was one of
Yes.
your old stories that I was like, oh, this is so hilarious.
Yes, I'm telling you. Like, I just, you know, you have to laugh, and a laugh, I think, that doesn't like put anybody down. You know what I mean? Like, there could just be some silly stuff out there. But yeah, no, pet therapy, I think, is a real thing. I do believe in, you know, having a pet companion. One of the segments that I had in Corpus Christi for almost 7 years is called Pause for Pets.
Pause for Pets.
And now here, being in the Metroplex, I try to be as much of an advocate for people to adopt as much as possible. And we've recently started Adoptable Pet Pals through KRLD. And we're working with the SPCA of Texas to try to get animals adopted. Down in Corpus Christi, they had one of the worst stray problems in the nation. And the U.S. Humane Society actually came down to start programs down there for like trap and release and vaccinations and whatnot. And our once a week pet of the week segment turned actually into like a daily segment that's how many animals needed to be adopted.
Wow.
And it was like a 90% rate of any time, an animal showed up on our segment, they got adopted or
Nice.
fostered. So, I hope to do as much as I can here in Dallas right now because of the pandemic and people returning animals and just all kinds of other issues. All of our local animal shelters right now are swamped. They need help. They need people to come and adopt. They need people to be responsible and get their animals neutered. And so I'm a huge advocate for that. But I have a dog myself, and on tough days, it's just pet therapy is good.
What's his name?
Jax.
And are you the one that began the adoptable pet idea, or it was something that they wanted to do?
I wanted to kind of do something similar to Pause for Pets, since it was kind of part of my branding down in Corpus Christi, but apparently even before I started there, they had been wanting to do something of that sort. I just happened to be the right person to click with the project and finally help get it rolling,
Nice.
But KRLD had already been kind of trying to get it in the works.
That's good. Have you ever had a story that you cover that it took everything that you had in it to maintain your cool and your professionalism, even though like you wanted to break from being the anchor and have a human moment, you're like, I have to finish this? Was there anything?
Yeah, we used to have a segment every May in Corpus Christi with Driscoll Children's Hospital, and it was called Miracle Month of May. And what we would do was at the end of May, we would have a telethon that we would host on our station to raise money for the hospital, the children's hospital. But all leading up to the telethon, everyone, it was an all hands on deck project. So it wasn't just like me, it was all of the reporters, all the anchors would get stories from the hospital, any of the families who would volunteer to share their child's story. And I think those stories always touched me the most because my sister is special needs and has a disability. She was born with spina bifida, and she was born paralyzed from the waist down. And I will say this, like, my sister's freaking amazing. And I know I'm biased, but she's amazing. Like, anybody who knows my sister knows she's a go-getter. She's positive attitude. She's so smart. She's so loving and, positive, and doesn't let anything stop her. No matter that she can't walk. Like, that's nothing. She rides horses. She does, river rafting. She skis. She actually just recently competed in June at the National Special Olympics tournament in Orlando. So all of our family, yes, and she came home with 2 silver medals in bocce ball and a 4th place team win.
Nice.
There were like over 300 bocce players, so she smoked them.
That's awesome.
But I'm very sensitive to that. To families' struggles with medical care and just I'm very compassionate towards that, and so to see some of the kids and just the kids are just, sometimes they don't know they're sick, and they just their enthusiasm for life is stronger than anyone you've ever met. You think you have so many medical issues. How can that not let you down? How can you be so positive and happy? And they are like, that's just, to me, it just reminds me like just God's grace, and the blessings that we do have with our abilities and our health and even finances, because some of the things that the parents have to go through, or the fact that it's a miracle that, these hospitals can completely pay for their bills.
Yeah.
It's huge, So I think those are types of stories I'm very sensitive to.
I'm pretty sure it'd be really tough and literally have to dig into make sure that you stay composed.
Yeah. Now I will say on the flip side, there was one interview that I did. I could not compose myself, and this was like not a sad thing. This was just like an embarrassing thing.
What happened?
What happened? I don't usually get starstruck, but I was starstruck this day, and I had to do an interview, and I remember I was sweating bullets. I couldn't, my mouth is dry. I couldn't speak.
Was this at the Selena event?
No.
No?
This was I was doing a satellite interview. He wasn't even in the room with Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys.
I saw that. I saw that interview.
I was so nervous when they told me, they're like, Kristin, you're gonna interview Dak. I was like, what? I'm doing what? And they're like, yeah, you're gonna interview Dak. I'm like, okay, let's do it. He can't even see me, but it was just like, I'm putting my IV in. I'm sitting at the desk. I'm like, I only have certain, like, I can only ask him like 3 or 4 questions, because he's doing like a round robin with all these different media, and they'll tell him, hey, okay, this is KRLD in Corpus Christi. You're talking to Kristin Diaz, and he was like, oh, hey, Kristin. I was like, he knows my name.
That is funny.
Like, now I laugh about it, and like now if I ever saw him, I'd be like, what's up, Dak? No big deal. But
it wasn't.
A couple years ago, oh my God.
I saw the video. You couldn't tell that you were.
I kept it cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
I saw it.
I did, but,
it wasn't like that much. Now that I know, I'm gonna go back and look at it. Like, oh yeah, I can see that. She was. Yeah. How many other celebrities have you interviewed?
A few, but not a lot. Not a lot. Sometimes we would have like special guests as celebrities that would come in for some of the nonprofit organizations that I would emcee their event.
Nice.
So since I was already involved with those events, my news station would ask me to get like an interview with whoever the special guest or the guest speaker was for those charities. So, I think Dak was probably the biggest. I interviewed John Walsh, who was a big journalist. I interviewed
John Walsh. Nice.
Yeah, Lisa Ling. I interviewed her. I've interviewed for anybody who's a big Selena fan. Suzette Quintanilla.
You were at that event years ago.
Desi, the other one is the makeup artist Desi. I forget her last name.
I forget her last name, but yes, the makeup artist.
The big YouTuber. I interviewed her too.
And then I think at the same event, Becky G was there.
Becky G was there, yeah.
And you were super. First of all, you were a fan of Selena, super fan of Selena.
Huge fan, yeah.
And then you get to cover this event, and then you have all these people that have ties with Selena from like being part of the family to makeup to.
Isn't it weird how God works? You see all these full circles. Like, you don't understand how many times I talk to God. I'm like, wow, God, like this is so wild. Like I see what you're doing. Like I see what you're doing. Like as a little girl thinking like, man, I just want to be just like her. And to have my first step in my big first step in my career going down to Corpus Christi. You know what I mean? Like, what? It's wild.
That's true.
But yeah, I have nothing but amazing things to say about, like her whole family and the people. I've met a lot of them and they were all amazing. I know that. Again, in the media, you hear things, you hear whispers.
They love gossip and stuff like that.
People like to hate too. Yeah, people like to hate, and I'm like, nah.
I did an episode because sometimes I do solo episodes, and then I cover her as far as just what I like to do is get a couple fun facts that people didn't know. Like a lot of people didn't know Sherry Lighters was one of her best friends. Yeah. And they were like kind of like she was teaching her how to be a girl and things like that. And a lot of people didn't know, and I like to find this couple little things that like.
Yeah, when I listen to your podcast, I'm always like, I was like, I love that you do so much good research in the back. Like, I learn a lot, when you pick certain people in history. I
appreciate it.
Doing their thing.
But I do need more because you're.
What?
You're A1. You're A1 on TV, on radio, and even though I've taken the classes, I still need work. But it's super cool to watch y'all work. Like the people that are professionals, and be like you can hear it because I know about the enunciating, the wording, the expressions, and different things like that. Even reading the teleprompter, like man, salute because it's freaking. We make it look so easy.
Thank you.
So I think I pretty much covered everything that I needed to cover. I appreciate you very much for being here. I mean, you have an amazing story. Your mom is amazing, and your dad as well. So, and as I mentioned earlier, I think they'd be super proud of you. And with us being connected now with everything as far as the news, and then you putting content online and everything, I think that you definitely are touching the masses and in a global scale. So, Kristin Diaz, you are a global Latin factor.
So. Thank you.
One last question before I let you go. If anybody was to Google you years from now or search you in some kind of search engine, what do you hope for them to find about you?
I hope that they find, if this is in the future, I hope that they find that I made a positive impact in some way or another, and represented for Latinas, and whether that be a trailblazer or whether that be just supporting other Latinas, and maybe that be in whatever I do or can create or, can be a representative for. I hope to be able to make others proud and give other people an opportunity to, move up.
Yeah, I think you definitely will, and I know that you are a role model. If you don't realize that other Latinas that may be looking into getting into the news and things like that, they're watching you, be somebody to as like an example,
Thank
because
you.
a lot of the times I feel like if you can't see somebody like you, sometimes maybe you can't relate. But when you see somebody like you, be like, oh, look, she did it. I might be able to do it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And doing it in an English network, not just the regular Latino channels that we have.
Yeah,
In
and why not do both, right?
Absolutely. we do have that
Yeah.
not the luxury, but what comes with us being a Latino, we are able to do that because we can
Absolutely.
relate to that side and we can relate to that side
That's
as well.
right.
So yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
This was another episode of the Global Latin Factor podcast. Remember, we are just like you. We have the spice in this melting pot. Until next time.